shit's about to crash. Okay. All right.
Damn, it's far away. Different. Right.
Nah, you good. I'm definitely gonna edit this out. Maybe.
Welcome everyone to Solomon's Crown. So today, guys, we're gonna talk about the controversial case of Ahmaud Arbery. Everyone knows, who's been following the news, has been following the situation, knows what happened. A lot of us are happy that the verdict came out and these guys got convicted, rightfully so. It was a travesty. It was straight up murder of this young man. But we're going to talk about some of the insights, or rather, we're going to do a little insight of like what could have happened to have led to this, the conditions, the environment that could have led to this, and maybe and speculate on some of the mindsets of the people that were involved. So we'll just give us a kind of a background of the situation that happened during the incident and during the trial.
So essentially, I did a little bit of research today, and he was running through a different neighborhood. I guess in Georgia, there's a highway that separates the two communities, essentially. I mean, we know how it is in most poverty-stricken neighborhoods, or like just middle class, lower middle class neighborhoods. So essentially he lived on one side of the freeway, and then the neighborhood he was running in was like a more upscale neighborhood. They had like houses on the like lake or creek, whichever you want to call it. Essentially three men came out. Well, essentially at the end of the day, three men essentially chased him through the neighborhood because they had seen him on camera a couple times. There was an unfinished house in the neighborhood that he had been going into. He had been seen in there at least three times. He wasn't the only one that had been seen in there. A lot of people, I mean, there was a couple who went and had like, it looked like a date in there. I mean, kids came by there, and like kids would play in older construction houses. Like, I mean, when we were kids, we played everywhere. Like, it didn't matter. We weren't like thinking about that. But he was also going to school to be, he was going to trade school to be an electrician. So putting myself in the situation is like, if I'm going to school to be an electrician, like going in and looking at a house that's unfinished would be like, kind of like, okay, do I really want to do this? What can I do? Like, what is it going to take to get this done? Like, just seeing how the electrical work is going through the house and everything like that, or just seeing, like, I mean, it's just an unfinished house. Like, if you grew up in a low income neighborhood, like you never really had anything, your house doesn't look like that, you want to walk in and just kind of like explore. Because even in San Diego, like they had $1 million houses out there, and we just go look at them every once in a while, like, because like in the new construction, like you could just walk in the house and just like look around and be like, yo, this is kind of dope, this is kind of crazy. But it wasn't anything like, if the cops would have showed up, they would have been like, hey, like, you guys are trespassing on this property. Like, I was like, oh, my bad. Like, we just wanted to see what the inside of the house looks like. And there wouldn't be any altercations or anything going on like that. But essentially, these three men took it upon themselves to do a citizen arrest, which in the state of Georgia at the time and in the city, it was okay, because the old citizen arrest law was based off of slavery. So anytime a slave would get away or was running away, other people had the rights to stop them and detain them until the proper authorities could show up, or their slave masters would show up. So this is something that's like deep rooted, and it was like, they're talking about like the 1950s, maybe a little bit further than that. But bro, like it was like, I mean, you know how it is in the South. Like, it's not every place in the South, but a lot of these southern cities and towns that are like kind of off the map, off the grid, like they kind of like, nobody leaves their hometowns or anything like that. They're very traditional America, as one might say. Where there's still somewhat segregation. I mean, I was in Little Rock in 2012, and a school was talking about they had their first black prom queen, and I'm just like,
wait, what?
2012, bro. Yeah.
Jeez, man.
So
that's crazy.
Like, I mean, that's the thing, is like, we live, I mean, I came from a big city, San Diego, California, and like San Diego, bro, let's mix of everybody. Like we got Asians, blacks, Hispanic, like Africans, like people from all over. Like, so seeing people of different ethnicity, I'm gonna have to edit that out. Ethnicity, I can't say it.
Nah, you good,
bro. Ethnic backgrounds, as we say, bro. Like tongue tied out here, but it's my French tongue. I learned French as my first language, so sometimes I mix it up a little bit. You know, I know a little Spanish and everything like that. But nah. So yeah, I mean, he was essentially a runner. I mean, he was an athlete.
Yeah, he was an athlete, yeah.
So he was just like, he came back from college because he had a different way. He didn't want to go to college. I mean, he didn't get drafted to the NFL like he had planned. Him and his brothers had big plans to get drafted. One of them, he was good in college or in high school. And his size was like what the biggest factor was on why he didn't get out or get into the NFL and even like drafted to a college team, because he had two cousins that actually got drafted. I'm not sure if the second one is his cousins, but for sure one of his cousins.
Yeah, one was his cousins. Yeah, the Detroit Lions.
Yeah. And then another dude who went to school with them plays for the Eagles, and we can backlog their names and everything like that later on. But I mean, the story isn't about them. But they did an interview on the 2020 interview, or the 2020 news report, and so for him to be running in a neighborhood like maybe like 5-10 miles out from his house, that's not unheard of for an athlete, especially somebody who's coming home from college. He doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. He's just trying to figure it out. I mean, before I joined the military, bro, like I would just be walking I would walk the beach, like all types of nights, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. Like I'd be in random neighborhoods just walking. Like sometimes you just got to clear your head, and sometimes the best time to clear your head is just when you're just either walking or running. So you got to kind of find that peace. And they even talked about it, like if it was a white dude running, he would be considered a jogger, but a black dude running in the neighborhood, oh, he's up to no good. And they use that a lot when they were like, oh yeah, like even the police reports and the police calls were just like, yeah, there's somebody over in his house and he looks like he's up to no good. And it's like, what is somebody who looks like they're up to no good? Like, yeah, so but that was just like the rough estimate of like kind of what happened. And yeah, I mean, for everybody who hasn't seen the video, like it was just like, it was literally like they called it a lynching, bro, because
that's
they literally murdered him in the streets. And I remember my mom calling me and telling me about it, and like my stepdad didn't even want to talk about it because I was just like, yo, like, is this real life? Like, is this really happening in America right now, to where somebody is like being shot and killed for what? Like by civilians on citizens? Like, and it's just like, at what point in time is this like going to stop? And I mean, truthfully, they wrangled it into the Black Lives Matter movement and everything like that. And I mean, my stance on the Black Lives Matter movement is just, I don't have any stances. I mean, I support anybody who stands up for what they're going to do, but I'm not that type of person to be passive. Let's just say that. And that's really like, we'll just not get into it because I have my own views on everything. I've been out the country for a little while, so I'm not the system expert on like what is going on in America. So once I get back, I'll see things for firsthand, and I'll be able to make my decision. But essentially, I mean, it was just kind of traumatizing to watch this happen, and it took 2.5 months for the video. I think it was like to like really
something like
out. That. So it was like, even when we were seeing the video, like it wasn't, he had already been dead. Like it wasn't something that just like, oh yeah, this happened today. Like this was something that like the dude was already buried and everything, and his mom was trying to find justice. But it's like, why does somebody have to go through this many hoops when your son is killed in broad daylight, in like cold blood, and everybody went home? Like all 3 dudes went home, and they just like lived their lives like as if nothing happened, as if they didn't kill somebody, and just cold blood, like unarmed black man. Like, and I mean, they tried to make it into like, this isn't about race, this isn't about that. So let's just take race out of the whole equation. Because I mean, like I said, there was a white couple that went and had dinner in there, or like had a date, or just like, oh, hey, let's go look at this. And then kids too, but like, you didn't see these dudes charging up these kids or the other couples or anything like that. And then there was a big thing talk about like the Confederate flag being linked to like racism and things like that. And truthfully, like a lot of people in the South have their own views on how they see that, but like the big misconception, as some would say, would be like, if you have like a Confederate flag or anything like that, then you're probably a racist, or you believe in racism and stuff like that. And I'm not going to speak on that, because I'm not from the South, so I can't talk on it. I don't know the history of it. I don't care to follow the history of it, because I'm not a big history buff. I'm not somebody who lives in the past. I'm more so looking towards the future and what needs to be changed and what we can do to change. So holding on to all these past lineages and things like that, it just doesn't matter, because truthfully, a lot of stuff that happened in the last 100, 200, 300 years has not been like good. So like, why would we hold on to these traditions, bro? I mean, there's certain traditions you hold on to, but like, then again, there's a lot of things that just need to be let go. So
So like, this whole situation is just, I've seen this many times before. I remember even when I was like, what, I want to say like 9 years old. Mm-hmm. And I remember the Ahmaud Diallo, I think I'm probably butchering his name, but I believe he was an African immigrant or first generation American in New York. It was a big case. That's why I even remember it like damn near 20 plus years ago.
Talk about the dude who they said stole a backpack?
No, that's Khalif Broder. Okay. But that's another one. Yeah. But this was like the earliest cases, big profile case in New York, where I think Ahmaud Diallo, he was walking around late at night and police came to stop him. And I think he had like a calculator or something in his pocket or something. And they thought it was a gun, and they shot and killed him. And it was like a big thing. And so it's always, there seems to be always this theme of that a lot of people are pointing towards, where you as a black man, you're never given the benefit of the doubt. It's always like, oh, if you're in this area, if you're in this store, if you're in this place, you must be up to no good. Yeah. Because let's take it back to the old Ahmaud case, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, Georgia has citizens arrest laws where if you're a citizen, you see something going on, you can detain somebody, right? Mm-hmm. Like a police officer. Why couldn't you give him the benefit of the doubt when you've seen multiple other people go in the house and do whatever, but this guy goes in the house? Why did you not at least ask him what's going on? Or, why did you immediately say, oh, we're going to detain you and take you to the police? Like, so
that was why? The other thing too, is like, so they said, oh, we rolled up to him. So they rolled up on him in a pickup truck. I'm not sure if the guns were showing, but they were essentially like, hey, like, we need to talk to you. And it's just like, for me, thinking about like, if some random dudes rolled up on me and it was like, hey, we need to talk to you, I'm like, yo, get out of my face.
Like, yeah, get out of my face. Like, I'm not doing the police.
Like, get out of here. So it's like, they were mad that he didn't listen to him. And I'm like, yo, who are you? Like, I don't
exactly
know. Like, get out of my face. And then they started chasing him with the truck. So then it's like, fight or flight. Like, yo, I got to get away from these dudes. Like, obviously these dudes are rolling up on me. I'm in a neighborhood I don't know. And now they're talking about like, yo, we need to talk to you. And then, I mean, at that point, I'm sure they pulled out a gun, and who knows what they even said to him at that point, because none of that stuff was recorded. So they're saying like, it's a one-sided story where they're saying like, yeah, we just told him we needed to talk to him. But they could have said, who knows what to him. And he would have been like, oh no, I'm definitely getting out of here. Like, but that's not the story. Like, he got shot, murdered, and dead. And that's the thing too, is like, they tried to like have all this compassion for the family, because they're like, oh, the wife of what's his name, I can't even remember the dude's name, but essentially the dudes who were convicted for murder, the wife, they were like, she's losing a son and a husband, and I'm like, bro, they're in jail. Like, you can still go see them in jail. Like, they're losing their lives. It's like, they're not dead.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's
seriously.
Like, they really tried to be like, oh, this is tragic. This is like, think about the family and how much they're losing in this situation. And like, the whole case was just like, truthfully, they told on themselves. They essentially just like blew everything out of proportion for themselves, and they kind of just like set themselves up for failure, because they released a video initially to like be like, look what we were doing. And that's probably an older mentality of like, yeah, maybe like 40-50 years ago, like this was fine, like, and even a little bit before that, like, oh yeah, look what we did, like, cool. Like, but now we're like in what happened in 2020, like, that's not okay, bro. Like, you can't just shoot people in the streets and be like, yo, we were a citizen arrest. Like, that's not how this works anymore, bro.
Because
like,
even if that was because even if that was a cop, like, you would have still gotten in trouble for that. Like what cop? Like, he wasn't. Did he fight? Before I say that, did he fight any of them?
I mean, so there's a brief moment where he runs around the truck, and there's an altercation that happens in front of the truck. And that's when the dude was pretty much like, oh, well, I had to defend myself because he was trying to take my gun. And the prosecution did an amazing job of like just blowing holes in this whole like story that they were going to do. Because like, he was like, so Travis McMicheal and then Gregory McMicheal. But so Travis was the one that was like, oh, well, he went and reached for my gun and he hit me, and I felt like I needed to defend myself, because if he got my weapon, then it was a life or death situation at this point. And he was like, I was just acting out of self-defense. And it's like, bro, like, you guys chased him in trucks around the neighborhood, and he probably lasted a lot longer than what he should have because he was an athlete. But like, bro, like, two dudes chasing you in a truck around the neighborhood, bro, like, it's just wild, bro, that they would even like, you wouldn't have energy to fight back. Like, and if anything, he was just probably like, yo, like, these dudes aren't going to stop. Nobody is helping him at that situation because they see what's going on, and people are probably just like, yo, what's going on? Let me stay in my house. And he's in a neighborhood that, I mean, his mom had already said like, yo, I grew up in here since I was 18, and there's a lot of racial profiling. There's a lot of racial issues that go on in that city, in that county. And I mean, he's probably been told the story. So growing up in that atmosphere, I mean, I used to go down to Mississippi and everything like that. And like, I'd always have the stories told. I mean, like, don't stop anywhere in Mississippi in the middle of the night. Like, and like on the side of the road, like, make sure you're at a gas station, make sure there's witnesses. And this was like when I was 12, 11, so like 20 years ago, bro. Like, and that was like real life. Like, my mom was like, in my one of my mom's friends who was actually from Mississippi too, and like, even my family down in Mississippi is like, yeah, like, you don't get caught out after night, like in the middle of nowhere out here. Like, it's real life. So I don't know, man. Like, it like, even after seeing the video, bro, like, it's kind of hard to watch because it's just like, you can see where he just like literally was just like, so that wasn't even the worst part. So the first responders show up, right? And he's still alive on the ground dying.
And no one helped him. No one
did not help him. Yeah. So they were just like, yo, are you guys good? Like, everybody's got their weapons away, and he's sitting there dying. And then nobody gave him help until the second responder showed up. So the first cop showed up and was just like, oh, I'm going to assess the situation. And then the next dude shows up and he's like, yo, has anybody given this dude medical attention? Like, what is going on here? And then he tries to provide medical attention, and the dude just dies. Like, he dies in the streets because nobody, like, us being from military background, like, if somebody's like even been shot, you can still save them as long as you apply pressure, like keep
Yeah.
them elevated. All this
Tourniquet.
stuff.
So that's stuff.
And he didn't get that, bro. And then it's just like, even when the first responders showed up, they were like, yeah, he's dead. Like, there's nothing we can do for him. Like, what? Like, bro, like that was another situation where it's just like, yo, like, where are these dudes, these cops getting their training? And it goes back into like the father, Gregory. He essentially, when the cops got there, he was just like, yo, I used to work for the DA, this and that. I think he was a cop at some point, like back in the day. And the cops literally just was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, he's one of us, like a colleague. Like, imagine your security forces in the military, and then your boy shows up and it's like, yo, what's going on, bro? Like, and then it's just like, oh, bro, you know, like some chick ran, like, or like, we're doing a search on this dude in his dorms, things like that, like whoever. But it's a more relaxed feeling when somebody you know and somebody you essentially trust comes up and is like, yo, what's going on over here? Like, and that's what happened. So all attention kind of just, like, they just treated him like, oh yeah, we know him. And the biggest thing too is in the case, so since he worked for the DA, he essentially tried to call in a favor. And then she was just like, oh, I can't help you. But then they passed it off to somebody else. So the sitting DA at the time, his father worked in the next county over. So he was like, yo, I'll take the case. And then the mother, she did some research and she was like, these two are like, they have a conflict of interest when it comes to this case. And then that dude stepped down and another DA picked it up, which was just like a middleman DA. But the second DA actually wrote like a letter saying like, yeah, this is self-defense. There's no reason to press charges, this and that. And he was pretty much like, yo, give him a clean bill of sale. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, bro. Like, so they started talking about how this was like about power and who you know and things like that. And like, you know how it is. I mean, I don't know if you know how it is, like in southern towns, things like that, like small cities, like it really does come down to like who you know most of the time. And like, it just be like that sometimes.
So I think that's what it comes down to in general in life, because kind of related, but you look at a lot of the beginnings of mafiosos when it came on to like immigrant like crime, organized crime, like a lot of that time, like in a lot of those times, sorry. So you have a lot of Italian families back in the day, you know, they would have people in the police, they would have people in you know, engineering, they would have people in construction, they would have people everywhere. So it's kind of like, oh, XYZ's in trouble, let me call up cousin Frankie, let me call up cousin Louie, and they would help each other out. Which is why on the channel we kind of like emphasize, you know, Black people coming together and forming those same kind of connections, because you never know. Because a lot of times in this world, it's like who you know, not necessarily what you know. Because I've seen it time and time again where it's because I knew the right people in the right positions, it helped me out. And I think it goes back to what Will was saying about, like, you know, a lot of these towns in the South, they have generations and generations and generations of the same people growing up in the same areas. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows, like, oh, your grandfather built this place in year XYZ. So that's why it probably took that long. And I mean, if that guy didn't release that video, if that video was released, it probably wouldn't have gotten anything.
That was literally the reason that they pretty much got convicted for it was a big reason. Like, because before that, and the thing is, the worst part is, the cops had that video since day one. Mm-hmm. Like, they saw that video,
of course,
and that was the big thing too that they talked about. Is like, I think it was one of the journalists was just like, how can two groups of people see this video? He was like, this is the biggest divide in America. Is one group watched the video and was like, yo, this is a murder, and then another group watched it and was like, yo, they were doing their civil act and being like good citizens and protecting their neighborhood. And that's like huge in America right now. Like in general, it's always been a problem in America where it's
the Second Amendment.
Yeah, like it's two different views on everything. And then the thing is like a lot of these laws are outdated, and they actually ended up changing the law for citizens arrest because it was outdated, bro. It was for slavery. Like you can't, like that doesn't pertain to modern day crimes. Like, and then on top of that, they added a a racial hate crime law too. So, I mean, the thing is like the mother, she didn't know anything about like what was going to happen. She just made a promise to her son that she was going to make sure he got justice. She did her research. She called a bunch of people, and then the news story just kind of popped up because a journalist reached out to him, and it kind of just, everything kind of just tumbled into place. And truthfully, that's how it should be. But like, it took a lot of her trying. Like I said, like it took like 2.5 months. It was like 79 days until they got like arrested. And it's just like, and like 79 days is when like everybody else was like seeing the video. So it's like,
exactly,
bro, like she was going through it. Like that.
What's to say that like one of those dudes or all of them could have like moved to wherever?
I mean, they would have had to been found, but they could have just disappeared if they really wanted to.
Yeah. And it just goes to show like the bias that's there. And I mean, from my personal view, it's like I don't think racism is definitely as bad as you could say like 30, 40, 50 years ago.
No.
But it definitely still happens, man. Because there is a difference between like complaining about it and keep on like making it hold you down instead of like working hard and like pushing through it.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely still happens, man. Like even when I came back from Jamaica, I was racially profiled multiple times. Like I would go in this, even when I came back from the military, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember after being in Japan for like years, like not having to worry about like, is this police gonna follow me, like, or is like someone gonna look at me weird? I come back to America to visit my family, and like I'm at this store, and I think this restaurant, because I think I was actually trying to play this magic tournament, but I was out eating, and like this couple was like looking at me weird because I had like on a hoodie, I didn't have a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
and this white couple was looking at me weird, like why am I here kind of deal. And then this other black dude came in. I was like, man, it's like it doesn't matter who you are. You could be out there fighting for your country, and people look at you different because you know you're a certain skin color. And it's just like the fact that they shot the dude and he's out there bleeding out, and it took for a second set of responders to actually say, hey, this guy is about to he's dying. Did anyone look at him? And it goes back to the Floyd case, one of the biggest cases in the world in recent history.
And that happened during the same time frame. So.
Exactly. And it's like you're kneeling on this dude, and he's like choking out and whatever in broad daylight. And it's like, whatever. He was a criminal, or he was not supposed to be. They always
try to bring up the background and stuff like that. And it's just like, okay, that doesn't give you any rights to kill people. Like we have a justice system, we have a legal system for a reason. Mm-hmm. If they need to get a legal, like a fair trial. That's what the law states. So for you to take it in your own hands and just be like, oh, well, he was a bad person anyway, I'm just going to kill him right now. Like, and then be like, I mean, that whole case was just kind of like everywhere. I mean, the thing is like, even us in the military, we have a certain level of training that even in a hostile situation is like, we're still held accountable because everything that we do is analyzed. Like it's a code of conduct, bro. Like there's certain levels of like
rules of engagement.
Yeah. Like you can't just kill people and just be like, I mean, I was watching 13 Hours in Benghazi the other day, and even when they're like getting actively attacked, they were just like, nobody shoot anybody. I don't need anybody going to jail for shooting a random farmer who was unarmed. Like there's levels to this. Like, and the thing is like everybody tries to be like, oh, well, these cops are under a lot of stress and this and that. And it's like, yo, the military is under a lot of stress too, but you don't see us flipping out and like killing people and just doing all this random stuff. Like some of the most professional dudes who were at these riots and protests were people from the National Guard and stuff, and you didn't see them like just like beating people up, shooting people, all types of stuff. Like, bro, like there's no excuse for it. Like, and truthfully, I'm a big believer that nobody should be taking lives unless it's absolutely necessary, and that's just my standpoint on it, and period. Like, that's my personal views. And like, even in self-defense, like you can, I mean, like think about Europe. Like if somebody breaks into my house and they just have their bare hands and I stab them or shoot them, with the rare occasion that you have a gun out here, that's excessive force, and you can go to jail for that because you used more force than was necessary to take care of an assailant. And that's something that keeps the crime rate down because, I mean, truthfully, like most of their guns out here are for hunting. Like you can own guns, but it's not like big and common. And it's like, people make the argument about guns and things like that too all the time. And I'm not going to get into that because, I mean, I'm not going to get into it. I'm just.
This is a slippery slope. This is a slippery slope.
So, I mean, truthfully, I'm going to buy a gun when I get back to the States because, I mean, protection in general. Like, I don't need somebody breaking into my house with a gun. So that's my views on it. Like, I will own a gun for my own personal protection, but beyond that, I mean, even with that, there runs a risk because I don't know where I'm going to be, what type of neighborhood I'm going to be in, and like I could get pulled over by the cops and they'll be like, "Oh, he's got a gun and just shoot me." Like that's the stigma behind owning a gun and being black in America. But like, truthfully, like sometimes these situations go down and people got expired guns, they don't have the right paperwork and this and that. And granted, okay, like cops are in situations like high stress situations. So like I get it. I'm not saying they're wrong or right, but some of these situations can definitely be handled in different ways. I mean, incidents happen, like you are the final decision in what happens in the situation, but you also have to be there and hold yourself accountable for whatever actions happens after that. You can't just kill a man in cold blood and be like, well, I was scared. Like, no, like that's not an excuse to kill somebody. Like, I felt threatened. Is like, well, were you threatened at the time? And
exactly.
It comes down to a big thing is like, yo, you're supposed to be a highly trained professional, and you can't, if you're a highly trained professional who cannot perform your duties, then maybe you shouldn't be in this profession. And that's just what it comes down to.
So it's interesting just looking at the whole basis of the Constitution, the whole basis of the Second Amendment, the reason why it was created. And because a lot of people, especially on the side of guns, will go back to that. Yeah. And it's like, personally, I'm all for guns. Like, I think that people should have the right to defend themselves. Like, the Second Amendment is special. It's there for, you know, American citizens. It's something that American citizens can enjoy. But for instance, I would take Japan, right? So in Japan, when you're given a license, you're considered like a highly trained professional, right? So if you bump into somebody, even if they were in the wrong, like you could even hit a drunk person who's like meandering in the highway by accident, you're going to go to jail. You're going to get the full brunt of the law, because in the laws of Japan, if you are a professional, if you have a license, you're pretty much on the same level as a F1 racer, Formula One racer.
It's just like a boxer. Like whenever you're a boxer, you're classified as a lethal weapon.
A weapon, lethal weapon, right?
Yeah, like your hands. So you can't just go and get in a bar fight because you can be charged for murder because you're a professional.
Yeah. So it goes back to this thing, right? So I think one of the this is my personal opinion, you might get flack for this, but I think the Second Amendment gives people an overly sense of free range to do whatever they want with guns, in that in the military, you're given training, you're given rules of engagement, you're given how to handle guns properly or whatever. and what have you, right? So whenever we do come into incidents, or people come into incidents where they have to deal with a hostile or to take someone in, there are certain steps that they mentally drilled into them before they even go into lethal force, right?
Yeah.
So we obviously see, not even counting in the racial bias, but we obviously see that people, they just take it like, oh, I am covered by the Second Amendment. I should just go in. I can go in and I can treat anyone anyway with my gun because I'm protected, and they are legally, right? But I feel like it's the lack of education in gun safety, because we've seen it, with the whole Rittenhouse situation. We've seen it with obviously the Ahmaud Arbery situation, whereas people going in and granted they have the right to do that, but they aren't trained to deal with
high stress situations,
high stress situations, human interaction, de-escalation.
Exactly.
All those things.
And that's the thing too, is like, if I own a gun, if I'm like, me personally, like going back to the States, I'm like, I can get training, like professional training. I plan to have a like $2,000 Glock, but
oh my god.
But I mean, I'm training. Like, I'm not just gonna be some dude with a gun. Like, I mean, I'm already shooting marksmen in the
Oh my god. Stop flexing out here, bro.
M4 and M9. I mean, you gotta hold it down sometimes, but but like, I want to be trained in all types of guns, like all types of, I mean, in general, like, it's just a good talent to have. I mean, I probably train my daughters how to operate guns at a certain point when they get old enough. And I mean, 13, 14 is old enough, because truthfully, like, it's rough out here for women, like, especially like with all the abuse and rapes and things like that. Like, my daughters are never going to have to deal with that, because they're going to be trained how to handle these situations at all points in time. Like, my daughter, like my oldest, she's a fighter, so like, I'm putting her in boxing. Like, that's period. Like, I mean, I know we did taekwondo, and that wasn't safe with nobody, bro. Like, bro, you don't get your ass out of here with that taekwondo, you yellow belt head ass. Like, bro, like, nah, I'm raising boxers, bro. Like, fighting out here. So I mean, but even with that, is like gun safety, like practicing gun safety and making sure that they know that a weapon can kill somebody. And my daughter is already like understanding of that. Like, when somebody dies, like, they die, like, because she used to be a little wild and reckless. And I was like, yo, do you know what happens to you? Like, if you fall off a slide or you jump off of this and that, like, you can die. Like, and she understands that. Like, so I'm very open with my daughter as far as like how life is, because I'm a realist, and there's no sugarcoating anything. Once you step out those doors, like, the only person who's going to protect you is you, like, period. So she has to be prepared for this world, and this world is everly evolving. So I mean, it's not, I mean, in the last 15, 20 years for us, like, it's been different. Like, so that's just my say on it. Like, I have a plan. I have a game plan. Like, so, I mean, I'm gonna definitely take my right to own a gun, but I'm also gonna train myself to handle guns and get proficient in shooting guns and get proficient in de-escalating situations, and just having that background training so that I am protected whenever it comes down to a situation where I might not be in control, or I might be put on trial for it. And then I can just explain, like, yo, I have this and that training. I de-escalated the situation the best I could, and this is what happened. I'm not going to be one of those dudes who's like, I don't know why I can own a gun. I don't know if my license is expired, this and that. Because
you have to know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big thing with like the Black community, if we're going to talk about that, is like not educating yourself on like gun laws and getting the training. Like, owning a gun, anybody can own a gun, but do you know the laws behind owning a gun? Do you know when and where you can carry a gun? And depending on states, like, can you even cross state lines with certain guns? And does your license carry into another state that has an open carry? And I mean, there's a lot of states that don't have like laws for, like Alabama, you could just buy guns. Like New Mexico, I think they were telling me already, is like, yo, you can just buy guns. Like, dudes are just buying guns at Walmart. It's like, yo, let me get some milk, some eggs, and let me get a Glock. Like, bro, like, it's that serious. Like, bro, like, it's it's like just another day of shopping.
So I mean, just looking at this from a more deeper and some ways a wider perspective,
mm-hmm.
I think a big thing about it is racial bias. That's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this one case. I failed to remember his name, but it was a big profile case where I think he worked at a school.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the car with his girlfriend and his daughter, and he got stopped. The police, and I think he pretty much told the police, which is what you're supposed to do if you have a gun, that, hey, I have a weapon, officer. I'm gonna reveal it, or I'm gonna tell him where to put it or where it's at. And he got shot same way. So even sometimes being a responsible gun owner as a Black person, granted, that was just one example. Sometimes it can still get you killed. And I think overall, and I see this a lot in American society, I think there's just a apathy, just basic disregard for human life in this point in time, because in Japan, and granted, there's two different countries, two different cultures and histories. You can go out, you can lose your wallet, you can ask people for directions, and people go out their way to help you. They might not like you because you're American or because you're this race or whatever, but if you go out somewhere and you're lost or you need help, like, people will bend over backwards to try and help you. Whereas in America, sometimes you're not going to get that in certain places. And I think in America, sometimes we're so concentrated on individualism and everything that, and then you mix in the biases and everything with that. I think it's just the lack of compassion and the lack of common human decency, where it's like with the Ahmaud Arbery case, he got shot and they didn't even bother to like see if this guy was alive. He didn't get his day in court. You know what I mean? So I just think that's what one of the issues is. It's like people, they will see something, they will let their biases affect them and whatever cloud their judgment, and they will take action before actually thinking it logically through. And then at the end of the day, they'll be like, oh, but I'm protected under the Second Amendment. And it's like, you can't use the laws and whatever to your own advantage without thinking about the other person, and it's just that's just my thought process.
Well, I mean, it goes into like as soon as you do something that's like potentially going to get you into jail, it's like, now I got to think about myself. It's never like, what did I do? Like, how does this person's family feel? Like, I killed somebody. And the thing is like, I think that murder is so overly happening in the States. Like, it's just like, bro, you see a news report like every 30 seconds, it feels like. At some point, like, I mean, the death rate for gun related crimes in America is like a lot higher than any place else. So like, I was watching a documentary where it's like, yo, the youth are becoming numb to their friends dying, because like, and I want to say it was in Chicago, but it was like people are dying so often that people aren't even having time to deal with all the trauma of like people dying. So it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, somebody died. Okay, cool, whatever. Like, shit happens. I mean, the family deals with the grief and everything like that, and then you kind of just move on. So it's definitely become a problem. I mean, I'm on my way back, so once I get back, I can give more insights on all these things. Yeah, because I mean, you're in Japan and you're like in the Graceland, so like, I mean, and Europe isn't that much different from Japan. It's just a slightly different, still safe. Probably a lot more like street fights, knife stabbings and things like that. But I mean, either way, I mean, hopefully, I mean, if you don't put yourself in that type of situation, like, then you should be fine. It's not like a lot of these situations are happening, but I mean, people are fighting out here and stuff like that. So, but I mean, it's one of those things.
But closing remarks, as I said before, this is a travesty. People shouldn't be out here losing their lives for dumb, stupid stuff like this. I think there just needs to be more compassion and more logical thinking within, whether it deals with anything in life or with like gun, conducting yourself with the gun. whether this person may or may not have been stealing or whatever. I just think overall this is just something that shouldn't have happened. It was just racial bias and just power tripping over the situation. I'm glad that Ahmaud Arbery, rest in peace. Like he got his justice. Those guys are going to jail, and that's the legal system worked. Granted, it took a while, and thank God for that video. But yeah, he got his justice, what he deserved. So that's my
step in
thoughts
the
on
right
it.
direction for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing, is like there's still a lot of work, even like with the things that his mother did as far as getting the laws changed and working with the government officials and everything like that to kind of just like show light and bring light to these things. It's just one state, it's just one city. Like there's so much more to be done in the United States in a whole. And I mean, truthfully, people have to just stop looking at it as like, well, I don't deal with that situation, so I don't think I need to be a part of it. And it's America. Like, if you want America to be better, if you want America to be one of the safest places to live, to raise your kids and things like that, like, you shouldn't have to be in fear of raising your kids if you do have kids in any city in the United States. Like, if I was in Japan, like, there's not a city that I'm like, oh man, I can't go there to raise my kids. Like, I mean, maybe in Europe a little bit, depending on like, where you're going. Yeah, it's definitely different here. Like, just because there's so many different countries and so many different conflicts and things like that. But with that being said, like America, like there's a lot of places where it's just like, I don't want to raise my kids here. Like, nah. But with that being said, I mean, I think I've said enough today on the case. I mean, if anything, we can reattack the case later after we watch it, see what we didn't talk about, and we can highlight some points and maybe make some shorts or something just to get a point across. But I think that I am content with the verdict. The prosecution did an amazing job. The DA did an amazing job as far as like getting the proper, like, the situation was handled properly once it made it to court and everything like that. And even during COVID and all that stuff. And people were kind of skeptical because the jury was 11 Caucasian people and then, or white people, whichever everybody's calling them. But, and then one black dude or one African-American, whichever you call. But everybody was kind of like, sorry, it's a little bit late. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm just talking. But either way, like, people were kind of skeptical because a lot of the black jurors were dismissed, and they were just like, oh, this is going to be another one of those cases where these guys just get off. And I mean, justice was served, so it is what it is. I mean, I still don't approve of like how they were just like, oh, well, think about the family. They're losing a husband and a son. Like, get out of here, bro. Like, they literally killed a man, and they're just worried about going to see their family in prison. Like, this mother can't go see her son. Like, she has to go to his gravesite. And that's the biggest thing, is like, the media tries to be like, oh, we need to feel compassion for this family because they lost. Like, no, they didn't lose anything, bro. Their privileges were taken away. They lost privileges. They didn't lose their lives. They didn't lose anything. Like, their family members can call them. They can go down to the prison and see them. I don't know how good their prison stay is going to be, but I mean, they'll probably find somebody who's just like, I mean, it's father and son in prison. Like, they stick together and do whatever they do. Like, but I mean, I don't, to feel compassion for anybody who's like blatantly killing somebody and just being like, oh, well, what about their lives? Like, if they're still living and breathing, they have a life, period. Because they can make the choice to change their life around and be a whole different person. Not a totally different person, but they have to eventually gain acceptance of what they did and live with those demons. And that's maybe enough for them, but they also have to deal with the fact that they took a life, and the family whose life they took from is never going to be the same, period. So those are my closing remarks. And,
with that being said, guys, I'm your boy Pop, and
your boy Willie, man, and we'll catch y'all next time.
Peace, man.
Peace.